But since he now seems to have installed himself as a kind of jobbing Prime Minister, could you tell me, Mr. Speaker, how it is that we actually hold him to account in this House?
Order. I've known the Honourable Gentleman a long... Order, please.
End of Labour. Labour in meltdown as Reform MP rips apart their record. In a fiery parliamentary session that captured headlines across the United Kingdom, members of the Welsh Labour Party erupted in vehement protest as a Reform Party MP systematically laid bare what he described as the long list of failures of Labour's governance in Wales. The contentious exchange, which took place during a heated debate in the House of Commons, focused on the 26 years of Labour rule in Cardiff Bay and the socio-economic decline Wales has suffered relative to England during this period. The MP for South Wales West, representing Reform UK, delivered a detailed and uncompromising critique of the Welsh Labour administration, highlighting statistics that underscore the economic and social disparities between Wales and its nearest neighbour in the Union. According to the MP's account, Wales has fallen further and further behind in virtually every key devolved area since Labour came to power. The Secretary of State, stepping forward to respond, chose to highlight what she described as the positive impact of both UK and Welsh Labour governments on the Welsh economy. She cited data indicating significant improvements in employment, reductions in unemployment and economic inactivity, and increases in real total wages across the UK, including Wales. The government's position, as she outlined, is that the Welsh economy is undergoing meaningful change and growth under Labour's stewardship. Despite these reassurances, the Reform MP's allegations have struck a chord with many who feel that the promised benefits of devolution and Labour governance have not materialised as hoped. Critics argue that the statistics mask a deeper malaise affecting Welsh communities, where poverty remains entrenched and opportunities limited. The debate has sparked renewed calls for a critical examination of Labour's record and an urgent rethink of economic and social policies in Wales. Labour's long tenure in Cardiff Bay is undeniably significant. For over a quarter of a century, Welsh Labour has held power, shaping policies and priorities across devolved areas including health, education, economic development, and social welfare. Yet, the Reform MP's assertions raise fundamental questions about the efficacy of Labour's governance and the tangible outcomes for ordinary Welsh citizens. One of the key points raised during the session was the gap in household incomes between Wales and England. This income disparity reflects broader regional inequalities that have long been a concern across the UK. While some areas of Wales have seen pockets of economic growth, large swathes remain economically disadvantaged. The MP's challenge suggested that Labour's policies have failed to address these inequalities in a meaningful way. Employment figures were also at the heart of the debate. Although the Secretary of State cited improvements in employment and reductions in unemployment, the Reform MP pointed out that Welsh employment rates still lag behind those in England, suggesting that progress has been insufficient and uneven. He warned that without more targeted and effective interventions, these disparities could deepen. Life expectancy, a critical measure of social well-being, was another area where the Reform MP sought to highlight Labour's shortcomings. The fact that Welsh life expectancy remains lower than in England was presented as evidence of enduring health inequalities and systemic issues within Wales's public health system. The MP argued that these statistics reflect the cumulative impact of economic deprivation, healthcare access issues, and other social determinants of health that Labour has failed to adequately tackle. The Secretary of State's response sought to frame the debate in a more optimistic light, emphasising positive trends and the government's commitment to addressing challenges. She pointed to the overall increases in wages and the reductions in economic inactivity, underscoring that progress has been made and that the government remains focused on further improvements. Nonetheless, the spirited exchanges between the Reform MP and Welsh Labour representatives laid bare the deep divisions within UK politics regarding the future of Wales and the effectiveness of devolution. The Reform MP's vocal critique resonated with those who feel disenfranchised by decades of political continuity under Labour and are calling for a change in approach. Adding further complexity to the debate are wider economic conditions affecting the UK and Wales alike. High inflation, ongoing challenges related to the cost of living, and the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic have all exerted pressure on public finances and social welfare systems. These factors have compounded the difficulties faced by Welsh communities and made the task of improving economic and social indicators all the more challenging. The debate has also highlighted the broader tensions within the UK's devolved system. While devolution was intended to empower regional governments to tailor policies to local needs, Critics argue that in Wales, it has sometimes enabled entrenched political control without delivering sufficient accountability or improvement. Calls for greater transparency, more ambitious economic strategies, and renewed focus on public services have gained momentum in the wake of the parliamentary exchanges. For Welsh Labour, the challenge is clear: to convincingly demonstrate how its long-standing governance has translated into real benefits for Wales's people and to address the criticisms of stagnation and underperformance head-on. For Reform and other opposition voices, the parliamentary confrontation represents an opportunity to push for change and hold the ruling party accountable. As the political debate continues, the eyes of the Welsh public remain keenly fixed on Cardiff Bay and Westminster alike, waiting to see whether Labour's narrative of progress can withstand scrutiny or if calls for reform will gain the upper hand. The Reform MP's scathing critique struck a nerve not only because it exposed uncomfortable truths but because it directly challenged the narrative Welsh Labour has cultivated over decades. For many within the party, Labour's rule in Wales represents stability and dedication to social justice, with investments in public services, education, and healthcare touted as key achievements. Yet, the persistent gap between aspiration and outcome fuels frustration across the political spectrum. Labour's defence frequently points to contextual factors beyond their control: economic recessions, austerity policies imposed by Westminster governments, and structural challenges unique to Wales's post-industrial economy. While these factors undeniably complicate governance, the Reform MP argued that they cannot excuse the chronic underperformance or the inability to deliver meaningful economic transformation. Indeed, the roots of Wales's economic difficulties run deep. The decline of traditional industries such as coal mining and steel manufacturing in the late 20th century left a legacy of unemployment, poverty, and social dislocation. Over the years, various governments have attempted regeneration schemes and economic diversification efforts, but with mixed success. The question raised is whether Labour's long tenure has facilitated genuine structural change or merely maintained a status quo marked by persistent inequality. Education, often heralded as a cornerstone of Labour policy, was also called into question. Reform MPs cited international and UK-wide comparisons showing that educational attainment in Wales remains below national averages, limiting opportunities for many young people. The quality and outcomes of Welsh schools and universities have come under scrutiny, with critics suggesting that Labour's policies have not sufficiently adapted to the evolving demands of a knowledge-based economy. Healthcare, a devolved matter under Welsh government control, is another critical front in this debate. Welsh NHS services have faced significant pressures in recent years, including staffing shortages, waiting times, and funding constraints. The lower life expectancy rates cited by the Reform MP were positioned as symptomatic of broader health inequalities and service delivery challenges that Labour has struggled to address adequately. In response, Labour defenders highlight the unique challenges posed by Wales's geography and demography. Rural communities, which make up large parts of Wales, often face access issues to services and employment, complicating policy delivery. The Welsh Government has also invested in innovative approaches to healthcare and education, such as integrated health and social care models and reforms aimed at reducing educational attainment gaps. However, opponents maintain that these initiatives have yet to translate into tangible improvements in the indicators that matter most to citizens. The economic discussion during the parliamentary session also touched upon wage growth and employment patterns. While the Secretary of State emphasized rises in real wages and decreases in unemployment, the Reform MP pointed to persistent underemployment, low-wage sectors, and part-time employment levels that undermine economic security for many workers. The issue of working poverty, where employed individuals still struggle to make ends meet, is a growing concern in Wales as elsewhere. Moreover, the impact of the broader UK economy and post-Brexit realities cannot be ignored. Wales's economy is closely intertwined with England's, and shifts in trade, investment, and regulation following Brexit have created uncertainties. The Reform MP accused Labour of failing to present a coherent economic strategy that can navigate these challenges while fostering sustainable growth within Wales. The political dimension of the debate was equally charged. Welsh Labour's dominance in Cardiff Bay has long been a defining feature of Wales's political landscape, with the party commanding a strong electoral base and shaping policy direction. The Reform MP's intervention was a direct challenge not just to policy but to Labour's political monopoly, urging voters to reconsider whether fresh ideas and new leadership might better serve Wales's interests. Labour MPs' vocal reactions, ranging from shouting down the Speaker to impassioned defence, reflect the high stakes involved. For Labour, conceding too much ground risks undermining its credibility and electoral prospects. For Reform and other opposition parties, exposing perceived Labour failures is a strategy to capitalise on growing voter dissatisfaction and push for change. The debate also raises broader questions about accountability in devolved governance. With Wales enjoying increasing control over its own affairs, there is an expectation that government should be more responsive and effective. Critics argue that after 26 years of Labour leadership, Welsh voters have a right to demand clear evidence of progress and tangible results. Public opinion in Wales is divided. Surveys reveal a mix of pride in Welsh identity and concern over economic and social challenges. While some continue to support Labour's vision and approach, others express frustration with what they see as stagnation and unmet potential. This polarisation reflects a wider trend across the UK, where traditional party loyalties are being tested by changing economic realities and political landscapes. Adding to the complexity is the role of media and independent watchdogs in scrutinising government performance. Investigative reports and analyses have highlighted discrepancies in official data and raised questions about transparency and policy effectiveness. The Reform MP's parliamentary intervention was thus part of a broader ecosystem of accountability and public debate. Looking ahead, the political fallout from the confrontation could be significant. Labour's ability to respond convincingly to criticisms and present a forward-looking agenda will be crucial in retaining public trust. For opposition parties, building on the momentum created by such interventions could reshape the electoral map and policy discourse in Wales. In conclusion, the parliamentary session marked by the Reform MP's forceful listing of Welsh Labour's failures serves as a microcosm of larger debates about governance, economic justice, and political representation in Wales. It underscores the challenges of translating long-standing political control into sustained, inclusive progress for all citizens. The outcomes of this debate, and the policies that follow, will have lasting implications for Wales's future and its place within the United Kingdom. The ongoing tension between Reform MPs and Welsh Labour representatives reflects a broader identity crisis within Welsh politics. The Reform MPs' critique challenges not only the efficacy of Labour's policies but also the narrative of Labour as the natural party of Wales, a party that has for decades positioned itself as the guardian of Welsh interests and working-class values. This challenge calls into question whether long-standing political allegiances are shifting amid changing socio-economic realities. Political commentators note that the Reform Party's aggressive approach, particularly in publicly calling out Welsh Labour's record, is designed to tap into a growing sense of disillusionment among voters who feel left behind. Many in post-industrial communities, once Labour strongholds, are increasingly receptive to messages promising accountability, reform, and economic revitalisation. The Reform MP's speech, by enumerating failures, seeks to crystallise this sentiment and mobilise it politically. Worst history. Labour MP's comments on British history spark fury on live TV. In a fiery and highly charged debate broadcast live on national television, a Labour MP's apparent mockery of British history sparked widespread outrage among viewers across the United Kingdom. The incident unfolded during a tense parliamentary exchange surrounding the contentious issue of Gibraltar's sovereignty, a subject deeply rooted in national pride and decades of complex political negotiations. The MP's dismissive remarks, which seemed to trivialise long-standing British patriotism and sovereignty, ignited a fierce backlash not only from opposing politicians but also from a growing number of concerned citizens watching at home. The controversy centred on the announcement that Spanish border officials would be stationed at Gibraltar's airport and port to manage and check people arriving there. This measure, justified by government officials as a practical solution to streamline border crossings in the aftermath of Brexit, was met with vehement criticism from some quarters. During the live debate, one Labour MP appeared to mock concerns over Gibraltar's status, dismissing the sovereignty issue as trivial and waving away the legitimate fears expressed by voters. His comments were widely perceived as an affront to British patriotism, particularly because they came against the backdrop of the UK government's agreement to grant Spain a degree of control over Gibraltar's border without consulting the British public or even the people of Gibraltar themselves. This perceived lack of transparency and respect for democratic voices fueled a wave of anger and disbelief among viewers, many of whom took to social media to express their frustration and disappointment. One woman, a vocal critic of Labour's approach, did not hold back. She tore into the party's narrative, accusing David Lammy and other senior Labour figures of being globalist sellouts who are actively dismantling the nation piece by piece. Her passionate outburst struck a chord with many who see the current political landscape as a battlefield for Britain's very identity and sovereignty. For these critics, the issue of Gibraltar is not merely about a small territory on the edge of Europe but symbolises a much larger struggle, the fight to preserve British independence and control over its own affairs in an increasingly complex and interdependent world. The debate opened with the announcement that Spanish officials would be present at Gibraltar's key entry points, responsible for checking travellers and even denying entry if necessary. This arrangement, supporters argued, was a way to untangle some of the difficulties that Brexit introduced to cross-border movement, particularly considering that Gibraltar shares a land border with Spain. By having Spanish officials at Gibraltar's ports, border procedures could be more efficient and in line with international agreements. However, opponents immediately seized upon this development as yet another sellout by the Labour Party and the UK government. They argued that such a move amounted to a concession of sovereignty and a betrayal of the Brexit vote, which had been seen by many as a reclaiming of British control and autonomy. The Labour MP's dismissive tone only added fuel to the fire, with many viewers accusing him of undermining the very principles and history that have shaped modern Britain. The Labour MP's defenders argued that the deal was practical and necessary. They pointed to the support of Gibraltar's democratically elected chief minister, who endorsed the agreement as a means of ensuring continued peace and prosperity in the region. They emphasized that the arrangement merely mirrored standard procedures found at other borders within Europe, such as those on the Eurostar route between the UK and France or Belgium, and that it represented a sensible compromise given the unique geopolitical challenges Gibraltar faces. Yet, critics were unconvinced. They argued that no amount of bureaucratic justification could mask the reality that Britain was gradually relinquishing control of an important part of its territory. This was seen as part of a broader pattern, in which the UK's government was increasingly willing to cede power to external bodies or foreign governments, all while claiming to uphold national sovereignty and pride. The debate also touched on the broader implications of these moves for the UK's relationship with the European Union. Many Brexit supporters, including some within Labour's traditional voter base, felt that the government's actions betrayed the spirit of the 2016 referendum. The vote had been understood by many as a mandate to take back control, not just of immigration and laws but of borders, identity, and the UK's place on the world stage. The Labour MP in question faced pointed questions about why his party, which professes to support working-class and nationalist sentiments, appeared to be facilitating policies that undermined British sovereignty. Opponents accused Labour of being out of touch with the people's wishes, willing to pursue globalist agendas at the expense of national pride and security. The imagery of selling off pieces of the country resonated deeply with many viewers who fear the gradual erosion of British power and influence. One of the most dramatic moments came when a woman, perhaps representing the views of countless Britons, challenged Labour's narrative head-on. She accused David Lammy and his associates of deliberately working against British interests, dismantling the nation piece by piece. Her comments highlighted a profound mistrust of the political establishment and a belief that Britain's identity is under threat from within as much as from without. This moment was widely shared on social media and became a rallying cry for those who feel disenfranchised by the political process. It tapped into a broader sentiment of frustration with what many see as political elites' disregard for the will of the people. For these critics, the issue of Gibraltar was emblematic of a deeper crisis in British politics, a crisis marked by broken promises, lack of transparency, and a failure to safeguard the nation's sovereignty. Heated confrontation. Labour MP drops bombshell in tense confrontation. In a dramatic turn of events during a recent Home Affairs Committee session, Labour MP Sean Davies made a startling revelation that has sent shockwaves through Westminster. The committee, convened to scrutinise the government's handling of asylum accommodation, was already under intense pressure due to escalating costs and operational inefficiencies. However, Davies' unexpected disclosure has now placed the issue at the forefront of political discourse. The Home Affairs Committee, tasked with overseeing immigration and asylum policies, has been embroiled in contentious debates over the government's asylum accommodation strategy. With the annual expenditure on housing asylum seekers in hotels reaching a staggering £4.7 billion, MPs from all parties have expressed concerns over the sustainability and ethics of the current system. The session began with routine questioning, but tensions quickly escalated when Davies, representing Telford, seized the floor. His impassioned speech highlighted the government's failure to consult local authorities before establishing asylum accommodations in their jurisdictions, a practice that has led to widespread discontent and logistical challenges. Under the previous government, when the current Shadow Home Secretary was in the Home Office, 2 hotels in my constituency were opened. There was no notification to the local authority and no consultation, Davies asserted, his voice laced with frustration. This is another example of the Conservative Party crying over the mess that they made and the attempt that this government are making to clear it up. His remarks were met with murmurs of agreement from Labour colleagues and stern expressions from Conservative members. The atmosphere in the room grew increasingly charged as MPs from both sides prepared for a verbal showdown. As the committee session progressed, Davies dropped a bombshell that left his fellow MPs stunned. He revealed that, contrary to public assertions, the government had been covertly acquiring hotels to house asylum seekers,